Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. I had a really good question from a viewer a couple days ago asking me specifically about Baldur's Gate set and draft boxes and whether the 15% premium for a set box that you should usually be willing to pay still applied to Baldur's Gate. And he pointed out that Baldur's Gate set boxes were a couple of dollars cheaper than the Baldur's Gate draft boxes on that day. And so I thought about it for a while. I went and looked up some information and I put together some numbers in the response to them. And ultimately, what I kind of concluded was if you just took a draft box of Baldur's Gate and a set box of Baldur's Gate, and you discount the slot in the set box that is guaranteed to have a legendary card in it, which maxes out at about $4 of value, not average, but maximum if you draw the best one. If you discount that slot, then you'll get about the same number of rares and mythics in a Baldur's Gate set box as you will in a Baldur's Gate draft box. And considering that on the day that the question was asked, the set box was about $3 cheaper, and we don't really know how the list plays into it value-wise, I kind of concluded with a mushy answer that, yeah, set boxes were probably a slightly better value. They weren't the normal 15% better value. And so I just wanted to kind of re-examine the entire thought process that I went through maybe a year ago around that 15% number, talk about some changes that have happened to it over time, and how we need to kind of treat it going forward because the situation is becoming more and more complicated. Ultimately, WotC wants you to buy set boxes. They're pushing more and more over time. They're refining the list slot. It seems to be getting better. And they're putting more and more variants into set boxes that do not come in draft boxes. And so the original 15% number may not be valid anymore. So going back to this post from Mark Rosewater, July 25th, 2020, in the lead up to Zendikar Rising coming out, which was the first set that had set boxes, he made this post and he said, "What's a set booster?" And he went through and he actually very helpfully gave us a lot of data about specific slots in the packs and what their odds of being various combinations of cards were. And this was part of the data that I used for that original analysis that concluded that you should be willing to pay about 15% more for a set box over a draft box because it will typically have about 15% more rares and mythics in it, and the rare and mythic slots are where all the value is. So that came from this, a few other pieces of data that I got from discussions on Reddit, and some just analysis on all of it. So that was essentially data from 2020. And since then, we've seen the set box change a lot. We've seen the number of variants change. We've seen WotC experiment with new types of variants like the gilded foils in Streets of New Capenna. And I think it's time to really talk about what can we conclude today. So, there's DawnGlare, and DawnGlare has this very helpful EV calculation. We've set it here to TCG market prices, which I think for anything remotely recent, market prices are what you want to use because it's a time average of actual sales. And so here I've highlighted Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, and these are booster boxes. And DawnGlare points out that we assume that cards worth less than $1 are worthless because essentially they would be so hard to move and sell that you wouldn't even bother wasting your time. And it says, this is big, the values do not take into account foils or variants, and it says Eldraine. What he means is Throne of Eldraine was the beginning of the flashy era where all of these extra foils and etched foils and full arts and collector boxes and everything else started to become a thing. And so from Eldraine forward, we kind of have a problem here. This is EV of a booster box, and it excludes the variants. And so we need to ask ourselves two questions now, not just what is the premium for a set box over a booster box, but what kind of additional premium that we're not factoring in do all of the variants bring? So I thought we'd go to another site. Now this is MTGStocks.com, and they do kind of a similar calculation. They come up with a slightly different number where DawnGlare had about an $88 number. MTG Stocks this morning brings up 84.60 at the market value. Now, it could just be that they have a little bit different weighing algorithm for putting together this number. It could be that they've pulled data more recently, less recently. It could be that they have slightly different data sources. And so essentially $84.60 to $88 from DawnGlare, that's close enough. But it gives us an idea, and it tells us that almost certainly MTGstocks.com is also not trying to take into account variance. And again, these are still draft booster boxes, not set booster boxes. Now, there's a third source here, and it's MTGBoxSim.com. And the thing that this does is you can select a filter. So we're going to do show cards worth at least $1 so that we have the same kind of exclusion of low value cards the way that DawnGlare does. And basically, every time you hit this, it goes through and it just says, well, what are the slots and what can they possibly be and what are the market values of those? And then it sums them up for you. Now, this site does not give you an average of a very, very large amount of samples. So as you hit this simulate again button over and over and over, you see the different cards that come up and the different prices. So you can add up a whole bunch of these on your own and see what the average price is, which is what I've done here. So I've gone through and I just took 135 values. I hit the button 135 times and wrote them all down in this long column of values. And then I averaged them to $96.89. And I just went ahead and pulled the standard deviations just for the heck of it and plotted the distribution of boxes. So, if you were to open 135 boxes, your distribution of values on a box by box basis might look something like this. And this is sorted into $5 buckets. So the interesting thing about Box Sim is it does take into account foils. And you see that they actually pull in the foil card market price from TCG Player, and they display it here with this cute little graphic of the card kind of wiggling and showing you that it's a foil. And they put a little star right here. So they're actually trying to account for at least the foils and some of the variants on MTGBoxSim.com. And that's why you get an average price here that's, it's about $8.90 higher than DawnGlare's average price for a booster box today. And the real problem with trying to make a model of what the variants contribute to the expected value of a box, whether it's a draft box or a set box, is that you cannot theoretically derive what that premium should be. You can only empirically measure it by taking actual data. And so maybe if you're hooked up to the API on tcgplayer.com, you can pull a bunch of data, you could run an algorithm on it, and for, say, a bunch of sets you're interested in, or maybe all sets of the Flashy era or something like that, you could come up with values maybe within each set. Maybe you'd see that it's a pretty consistent premium across all the sets. But there is no theoretical model to derive what that variant premium should be. And so we have to look at pieces of data like this. This one that says that for a draft box, you get about a $9 premium for the variants. And so we might come back to our original question of how much should you pay for a set box over a draft box. And we might say that original 15% that we talked about maybe a year ago, that's still in place. It's probably expanded a little bit because there are particular variants now that set by set, WotC is starting to put in set boxes that they are not putting in draft boxes. So maybe 15% becomes a conservative number. And then maybe we add, another $8 on top of that. We probably want to add that $8 to the draft booster box price, then take 15% above that because we'll have 15% rare and mythics plus 15% rare and mythic variants. And so you might come to DawnGlare, take whatever their headline number is showing to be, and then add $8 and then multiply that by 1.15, and that might be a little conservative. So I guess the two things that I'm trying to get across here. One is that we don't have good models right now for doing this. If somebody wants to hook up to the TCG Player API and pull all those data and write an algorithm to sort it, that would be great. That would give us the actual answer, the true answer, the empirically derived answer from real data. Lacking that, we have to try to just come up with a good enough approximate model. And so here's where the reason for making this video came in. What do you guys think? What am I missing here? Do we have other sources of data? Do we have something else interesting? Has someone tackled this problem in a thorough way already? Because if there's a good answer to this, there's a possibility that nearly everyone in the market is underestimating the value of set boxes. And when we go out and we look at things like Zendikar Rising set boxes, not only do you have this premium for the set box over the draft box, we only measure the draft box price. We don't account for the premium. We don't account for the variance. And with Zendikar Rising, we're usually not even accounting for the Expedition box topper. And so I think there may be some opportunities to see some moderately inverted EV in the market if we can get a better handle on what these premiums and what these differences for the variance should be. So let me know what you think about that. Like I always say, if you want to fund this work, join me on the Patreon, and at some point I'll have enough funding on there, enough capability that I can actually just do this full time and go figure out what these real numbers are, because I could just write the algorithm that interfaces with the API on TCG Player. For now, I don't have the time to do that, but eventually that's the real answer. So otherwise, if you have any ideas about this, let me know what you think. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.